They opened the vault expecting paintings. What they found was a financial ghost town. No owners, no names, just $400 million floating in legal limbo. No alarms, no fingerprints. Just assets designed to survive time and scrutiny. This wasn't in Panama, it was in Switzerland. And the money? Mostly American. Stored in shells, moved through shadows, protected by a system built not to ask questions, but to look the other way. Because while the middle class files taxes and prays for returns, the elite moves capital through invisible pipelines, foundations, offshore trusts, anonymous art. This isn't just tax avoidance, it's identity erasure by design. Today, you're going to see how they do it, step by step. Not to evade the system, but to master it. This is how to invest like they'll never find you. They don't show up on Forbes. They don't ring bells at the stock exchange. But they own more wealth than most CEOs. And if you tried to trace their assets, you'd find nothing. No brokerage account, no crypto wallet, no LinkedIn bragging about passive income. Because for this class, wealth isn't something you display. It's something you disappear. The world's ultra-rich don't park their money. They bury it in instruments built to be invisible. In 2022, the U.S. Treasury estimated that over $5 trillion is held offshore by American individuals and corporations. Not stolen, not hidden in cash, legally sheltered behind vehicles designed to break the link between ownership and control. But that's just the surface, because it doesn't start offshore. It starts with intent. The intent to be untraceable, to design wealth structures that act like fog, legal, dense, and hard to grab. And here's the trick. The goal isn't to make money harder to steal. It's to make it impossible to prove it was ever yours. Think about it. If your house is held by a trust in Delaware, owned by an LLC in the Caymans, which pays rent to a foundation in Liechtenstein, which is managed by a nominee director in Cyprus, who exactly owns that house? Legally? No one, or everyone, or a structure that exists only on paper, written in legalese, encrypted by silence, and protected by distance. In financial law, there's a concept called beneficial ownership. It refers to the person who actually benefits from the asset, not the one listed on documents. This is what they target, not ownership, but benefit without exposure. They live in homes they don't own, fly jets they lease from their own shell companies, control billions without having their name on a single title. This isn't just wealth, it's untouchable wealth. And it starts with one idea. If no one can prove you own it, no one can take it. Divorce, litigation, tax investigation, good luck proving what isn't there. This is the logic of asset protection trusts, dynasty trusts, foreign LLCs, layered ownership. Each layer isn't a shield, it's a maze. And each step you take toward the truth just leads to another locked door. While average investors obsess over market timing, this class obsesses over non-ownership. They don't want their name on assets. They want control without liability, access without exposure. Because in this world, the paper trail doesn't lead to you. It leads away from you. And here's the genius. None of this requires breaking the law. It only requires understanding how it's written and how to never be named in the first place. A properly constructed trust can survive lawsuits, bankruptcies, even government seizures, because the trust owns the asset, not you. And if you're not the owner, you're untouchable. You still enjoy the property, you still benefit from the income, but legally, you're just a shadow. This is why billionaires don't fear recessions. They fear visibility. Because visibility invites lawsuits. Visibility attracts regulation. Visibility makes you a target. So they build structures not to grow, but to vanish. And by the time anyone realizes what happened, the money has moved, the entity has dissolved, and the owner never existed. Because the real game isn't played on the markets, it's played in the shadows, through instruments so obscure they don't even look like investments. But some of them do. Some hang in museums. Some sit in penthouses no one lives in. And some are traded in silence, with no price tag and no fingerprints. Let's follow the trail. You've seen them in museums, on the walls of yachts, locked away in private vaults beneath cities like Geneva, Singapore, and New York. Paintings, sculptures, rare artifacts, not just collected, but converted into containers of wealth. Because in this world, art isn't culture, it's camouflage. A Rothko doesn't just hang. It holds millions, silently, privately, and with no central registry. Here's how it works. A collector buys a piece through a private sale. The transaction is routed through a gallery or intermediary. The ownership assigned to a shell company. The location, a free port, a legal no man's land where goods can sit indefinitely, untaxed, unreported, unseen. These storage facilities aren't banks. They don't ask questions. They don't report activity. They exist in the legal gray, perfectly designed for secrecy. And inside them are fortunes. Paintings worth more than office buildings. Wine collections more stable than currencies. Sculptures insured for more than the companies that made them. Why art? Because it's subjective. Because value isn't fixed. And because the chain of custody is as opaque as the paint on the canvas. A canvas doesn't ping a database, a sculpture doesn't file a 1099, and no one questions why a $50 million piece hasn't been seen in public for 12 years. But it's not just about storing value, it's about moving it. Art can be shipped across borders without triggering alarms, traded privately, pledged as collateral, donated to foundations for tax benefits while still remaining under control of the donor. It's wealth you can hide in plain sight, or never sight at all. In 2016, the Panama Papers revealed a network of galleries and shell companies used to trade art anonymously. One painting, a Modigliani, was traced to a vault in Geneva. It had passed through 3 continents, 4 shell corporations, and 2 lawsuits, none of which named the true owner. Because it was never about art. It was about obscurity. And this strategy isn't limited to billionaires or criminals. It's used by institutions, family offices, even hedge funds, allocating capital into rare assets that aren't just profitable, but untraceable. And it doesn't stop at paintings. Luxury real estate, antique cars, watches that appreciate faster than stock portfolios. These aren't just toys. They're Trojan horses, smuggling value past visibility. Buy an apartment through an LLC, never live in it, claim depreciation, flip it through another shell, repeat. From the outside, it looks like a market, but on the inside, it's a laundromat with marble floors. Because when you control the narrative, you control the valuation. And when no one knows who owns what, no one knows how much there really is. That's the game. They don't need to hide the money. They just need to move it into forms no one's trained to recognize. And while regulators chase bank transfers, the real transfers are hanging in silence 4 inches from a climate-controlled wall. But these assets don't just disappear. Some of them grow, and some never existed on paper at all. Because the art of disappearance is only the first step. The real trick is building a system where every transaction leads nowhere, where every asset points to something that doesn't exist. And that system is already in place. It doesn't need a password. It doesn't need encryption. It just needs paperwork, signed by someone you'll never meet in a country you've never heard of. You've seen how they store value. Next, you'll see how they erase the trail. Most people think money moves through banks, but the rich know better. Money moves through entities, companies that make nothing, employ no one, and exist only to own something else. They're called shell companies, and they don't need walls, workers, or websites, just paperwork and jurisdiction. Here's how it works. You create an LLC in Delaware. It owns a trust in the British Virgin Islands. That trust holds shares in a holding company in Luxembourg, and that company is the listed owner of a penthouse in Manhattan. No red flags, no direct links, no signature that ever points back to you. And this isn't illegal. In fact, it's a service offered by law firms, private banks, and financial architects with glossy brochures and private elevators. Because the goal isn't to move fast, it's to move quietly. Each entity acts like a layer of clothing, obscuring the body underneath. The more layers you wear, the less you feel the heat. And in the world of finance, heat means scrutiny, litigation, regulation, taxes, discovery. But here's the genius. Shells don't just hide ownership, they transfer it, instantly, invisibly. With one document, one signature, and no public record, control can pass from one hand to another without anyone knowing a transaction even happened. And that's where the game gets darker. Because shells don't just mask people. They can mask countries, organizations, entire networks. The same system used by billionaires to shield assets is used by regimes to dodge sanctions, cartels to wash profits, and corporations to evade accountability. In 2020, a leaked trove called the FinCEN files revealed how major banks processed billions in suspicious shell company transactions. Many flagged internally, few ever stopped. Because the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. In the US alone, more than 2 million LLCs are formed every year, many with no beneficial owner publicly disclosed. And Delaware? It has fewer residents than anonymous corporations. Because if your name isn't on it, you don't pay for it, you don't declare it, and no one can take it. Shells don't build empires, they defend them. And for those who understand the game, one company is never enough. They create webs, dozens, sometimes hundreds, each holding a sliver of something, a contract, a right, a claim, so that no single entity holds enough to matter, but together they control everything. The goal? To ensure that even if you lose one piece, the structure survives, and no one can prove you ever held the others. This isn't asset management, it's asset illusion. And once it's in place, it's nearly impossible to untangle. Even forensic accountants admit, the deeper you dig, the less you find. Because shells aren't meant to protect what you have, they're meant to erase the fact that you ever had it. But what happens when these invisible entities start holding assets that generate real income? When the game stops being about hiding and starts being about profiting in silence, that's where the real alchemy begins. No keys, no name, no location, just numbers, frozen in time. Welcome to cold storage, where money doesn't just sit, it disappears. While traditional investors trust institutions, this world trusts no one. Not banks, not brokers, not even the blockchain. Because the chain might be public, but ownership doesn't have to be. Here's how it works. A crypto wallet is generated offline, never connected to the internet. Its private key stored on paper, in metal, or memorized. Once the coins are transferred in, the wallet is sealed. No login, no app, no third party. Just pure sovereignty and zero visibility. That's cold money. And it's not just Bitcoin. In this world, anonymity is a currency, and protocols like Monero, Zcash, and Tornado Cash don't just offer privacy, they offer erasure. With a few clicks, funds enter a mixer, a digital blender that strips transaction history. By the time the money comes out, there's no telling where it came from or where it's going. For regulators, that's a nightmare. For the invisible elite, it's freedom. And here's the twist. They're not hiding millions. They're storing leverage. These wallets can be used as collateral. They can fund trusts. They can sit untouched for decades, then resurface without a single tax document in between. In 2023, a cold wallet was discovered holding over $3.3 billion in Bitcoin. It had been untouched since 2011. No activity, no logins, no leaks. Just digital silence. And that's the point. Because in this game, activity is exposure. Stillness is protection. These aren't day traders. They're ghost investors, building fortunes that don't appear on any statement in any country. And when it's time to exit, they don't sell. They wrap the assets, mint them as NFTs, use them in DeFi contracts, loan them to themselves through entities they control, so the money never moves, but value changes hands. It's not hiding, it's transformation. And as governments scramble to regulate, the truly sophisticated have already moved on. They're not trying to stay ahead, they're trying to disappear completely. Because digital doesn't mean exposed, it means scalable invisibility. But what happens when this system, crypto, cold wallets, mixers, intersects with the old world of trusts, offshore law firms, and multi-generational wealth? What happens when money becomes code, and the code is written to vanish? That's when secrecy stops being a tactic and becomes a legacy. Because if done right, it won't just survive governments, it'll survive time. Some hide money, some move it, but the smartest don't do either. They redefine ownership using the most powerful tool in finance, the law. Because once the wealth is hidden and the trail is cold, you still need to protect it from one final threat: time. Recessions, investigations, inheritance claims. Governments, families, enemies, they all fade. But legal structures endure. Welcome to the world of dynasty trusts. Entities built not just to hold assets, but to outlive their creators and shield wealth from taxes, lawsuits, divorces, even disclosure for generations. How? By separating control from benefit, by turning ownership into a legal illusion where you can use the asset but never technically own it. That's how a billionaire in Miami can fly a jet leased from a company in Bermuda, owned by a trust in South Dakota, funded by profits from a holding company in Ireland, without owning anything at all. And if the IRS shows up, there's no income, no salary, no name, just documents and lawyers. Because the secret isn't in the hiding, it's in the structuring. South Dakota, Nevada, Alaska, they're not just states, they're jurisdictions for financial immortality. With asset protection trusts, there's no forced inheritance, no public record, no statute of limitation that can pierce the veil. Even creditors can't touch what the law itself refuses to recognize. And the irony? It's all legal, crafted not by loopholes, but by legislatures, lobbyists, and banks. Because the system wasn't hijacked, it was built this way, by people who knew exactly what they needed to protect and how to make sure no one could ever take it. Not just in this lifetime, but in the next. Because legacy isn't about money, it's about control. Control over what the world sees, control over what survives, control over who gets to rewrite the story when you're no longer here to defend it. And for those who master the architecture, death isn't the end of wealth. It's just the handoff. But what happens when someone cracks the structure? When a leak, a trial, or a revolution finally breaks the seal? You're about to see what happens when the untouchable gets exposed. You've just seen how the invisible elite builds their empires. Not with risk, not with hustle, but with structure. Layers of silence. Entities with no face. Assets with no trace. This isn't about getting rich. It's about staying untouchable. While the world obsesses over income, they obsess over exposure and eliminate it piece by piece. What you just saw wasn't a tutorial. It was a revelation, a glimpse into a financial architecture most people will never access because they don't even know it exists. But now you do. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? If this changed how you see money, power, or control, then do one thing the system never expected. Make this visible. Like the video, subscribe, and share it. Because if silence protects their fortune, then truth is the only thing that can touch it.